So my name's Jem, and less than 3 years ago I was diagnosed with advanced melanoma, which is a skin cancer, and it's severe. So I was diagnosed with cancer, and I had tumours in my brain and my lung and my lymph node, and I was told that all they could offer me was palliative care and I should go home and spend time with my friends and my family. And when you hear the words palliative care, you kind of think, well, that's the end, really? If that's the best that they've got to offer, what came into my mind is, what do I have to offer my cancer and my healing? Because there's a lot of time in between appointments with your oncologist or any treatment that you choose to do where you can be doing something to empower yourself in that position. At this point, I'd been doing Tantra for my own self-development for 5 years. So I'd been tuning into my body. I've been doing a lot of body awareness, a lot of breathing technique, a lot of working with my own energy in my system. And I knew of Tantra for a healing modality, emotionally and psychologically, being able to really shift old things that we hold on to in life that we don't need to have in our system anymore that holds us back. In yoga, it's called prana. In Taoism, it's called life force. In Tai Chi, it's called Qi. But it's all the same thing. It's energy, and it's sexual energy is included in that. And I'd heard vaguely in the distance some stories how this energy can cure very physical illnesses. And I was in a place of desperation because I didn't really have any other option. So I was like, what am I going to do? And it was time to take Tantra off the shelf and stop it from being a hobby or a weekend workshop, and suddenly going, I'm going to use this energy to help heal myself. And I went home, and I didn't tell anyone really about my diagnosis for about 3 weeks, because I needed to figure out what cancer meant for me. Because as soon as you start talking to people about cancer, you're overwhelmed with other people's ideas of what cancer is and what that means, and the stories of cancer, which are out there in the world surrounding you. And cancer has a massive energy. And I talk about how I raised my energy to be bigger than that of the energy of cancer that was out there. So I wouldn't go to the hospice when I was offered free massages. I sent home any district nurses and hospice staff that were visiting my flat. And I spoke really carefully with the friends that were around me about how I was trying to manage my cancer, because I didn't want those faces, those pity faces, or people putting the idea of what cancer meant onto me. I wanted to try and get through cancer with as much joy in my body as possible. And so I did a lot of research, and I recognised that cancer cells are mutated cells. We all have cancer in our system, but what happens is that our body gets to a point of stress and toxicity that we can't control our own cancer, and it overwhelms us. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to remove as much stress and toxicity from my life as possible. So I was very careful with who I spoke to. I didn't watch the telly. I definitely didn't watch the news or read any newspapers. I wasn't on Facebook. I let people go in my life who weren't serving me, wasn't healthy for me. We all have those relationships that actually we're kind of bound to by maybe a sense of responsibility. But are they any good for us? So I had to be really, really self-aware and really honest with myself about what was good for me. I also did a whole bundle of other things. I changed my diet. I went organic. I tried cannabis oil. I did a load of different things to de-stress my body and to remove toxicity. And I do talks all over the UK at vegan festivals and holistic healing festivals about those aspects of my healing. But one aspect of my healing I don't often get the opportunity to speak about is sexual healing. So I'm trying that all out on you guys. Is this okay? Great, thank you. So I was here a year ago talking about the other aspects. So if anyone else is interested in those aspects, you can talk to me or see the video on Inspiring Talks Facebook or YouTube. But tonight we're going to talk about orgasm and about sexual healing. So first of all, I want to talk about orgasm. Most of the orgasms that we will know about are something called peak orgasms. And these can be fast and furious and friction-based orgasms. Whether you're a man or a woman, we can achieve peak orgasms. And generally saying they're the easiest to achieve. So those are the orgasms where you can get from 0 to 10 quickly as possible. So 0 being cold, 10 being orgasm, which is attached to ejaculation. And if I was to physically embody it, it would be a woo, boom kind of orgasm, okay? And then you get other types of orgasm, and the one I'm going to talk about is called the full body orgasm. Because if I was going to remove as much stress and toxicity from my life and from my body as possible, I then wanted to fill my body with joy, pure joy. And I wanted to fill every single cell in my body with that pure joy. And the only way I knew to do this was through orgasm. And I figured this could work. If it doesn't, I'm going to go to the end of my days pretty happy. So let's give it a go. It's a bit out there, I get it, but let's try. So the full body orgasm, to achieve that, you've kind of got to do the opposite of what you do to achieve a peak orgasm. So for a peak orgasm, you're very focused on the final destination, the release. And it often, as I said, is hard and fast and friction-based. When we get close to peak orgasm, we hold our breath, we contract our energy, our breathing goes into our chest, and we strive for that orgasm. So on my imaginary pleasure chart, 0 to 10, you can kind of get to about 7 and 8, and that's the point of no return. That's the point where you have to get to 10, otherwise you're incredibly frustrated. So to get to full body orgasmic experience, what I tend to do, and please do try this at home, I do set homework, is to hang out in the pleasure zones, which are the 4 and the 5s. So they're the subtler pleasure zones. We're not always going for the 8s and 9s and 10s and the woo pleasure. We're going for the nice, soft, subtle pleasure. Hang out in the 4 and the 5s in your pleasure zone for as long as possible. So what happens is, instead of this quick rise up and this shoot or explosion at the end, we're gradually rising. And the idea is, on your pleasures chart, you want to get to about a 7, okay? And then you want to hold it at that 7. Again, remember, 8 is the point of no return. And you want to hold it at that 7. And when you're at that 7, you need to then do the opposite of what your body kind of wants you to do. So instead of contracting and breathing fast and racing for the end, you need to breathe and relax, breathe deeper, relax your body, really open to this experience and let it become a full body wave. Slow everything down. And instead of striving for the end, stay in that 7 for as long as possible. What this can then occur is a full body orgasmic experience. And what this can look like is a wave or a shudder in your body. And it really does go to the end of your fingertips and to the tips of your toes. And on a very kind of physical level, you can develop a shake. What that shake can do is stimulate your lymphatic drainage system, which helps you flush toxins through your body. So on a scientific level, full body orgasm is good for your health. We all know that orgasm is already a stress relieving situation. So that's kind of why we go for it. But instead of stress relief being the intention, we kind of want it to be a healing experience. So I coach people through cancer. And for a lot of people, that's just talking to them about their nutrition and talking to them about full life detoxes, how they can release people and situations in their life that no longer serve them. For other people, it's explaining about coffee enemas and tricky woo-woo things like that. But what I always ask people is, what pleasure do you have in your life? Because when people get a diagnosis, often the first thing that hits them is absolute confusion and overwhelm. And you're in cancer bubble, you're just in a cancer world, and there's very little outside of cancer that you end up doing. Everything is thinking about cancer. What you eat, where you go, who you talk to, on Facebook groups with other survivors at the hospice talking about your cancer. So I say to them, what is it that you do that is pleasure, maximum pleasure for you, that has nothing to do with cancer? So I try and talk to people about how to have orgasmic experiences within their own bodies. So whether that's with a partner or a lover, but also self-sexing and being able to experience orgasm without even touching yourself. Now, I get that this is a bit out there now, but through breath, and through sound and through movement, there are loads of different ways to raise your life force energy. It doesn't always have to be a massive, explosive, full body, multi-orgasmic experience, but just learning how you can really tune in to your sexual energy in your body. Just using your own body, hands-free, breath, sound and movement. And I teach this in workshops, and I teach this in one-to-ones. And I do this on Skype, and I do this with couples, and lots of people are always asking me how they can get to be multi-orgasmic. And I say, well, the first thing you want to do is stop trying, because trying is the attitude of a peak orgasm, if you like. So what I really want to share with people is that healing doesn't have to be difficult, and it doesn't have to be traumatic. We can really heal through pleasure. And the people that I'm coaching who are healing fast are not only detoxing all of their life, they're really tuning in to their own sexual energy. So yeah, what pleasure do you have in your life? That's a good question maybe to take home for your homework. And if anyone's got any questions, we've got some time left. Go on.
The medical professionals that you may have been in contact with reacted to your recovery?
They were shocked. They were falling off their chairs. A few of them took interest. And when I speak about nutrition and detoxing and cannabis oil, they made all the right sounds. But then as soon as I spoke of anything around sexual meditation, they just completely glazed over. So some of the younger oncologists that I came across just kind of went, "You're lucky. You're lucky." But the older practitioners who have been around the block were my dermatologist, for example, because it was a skin cancer. There would always be a colleague in the room whenever I visited my oncologist, because I was an anomaly. So they were always calling other people in, my colleague or my supervisor, to come and see me as well. And he said to his colleague, "It's cases like these that make you question your work." And I kind of saw this man's whole belief and, 30-year career behind him falling apart a little bit. So it was a very humbling experience, to the point where I kind of had to say to him, "Are you okay?" So mostly it's not paid attention to. And I'm not the only person doing this. I'm a community of probably over 1,000 people that I know of vaguely, who are all also following similar protocols. Not always all on the sexual healing side of things, but the rest of it. People are doing this and have been doing this for a while, and it is happening, and it is out there, and it is working. I'm hearing cases of it every week. It's just a shame that not more professionals are paying attention to it. Thank you. Oh.